The Art of Letting Go, Zen Sleep Journey. Welcome to this journey of release. Hello, dear friend. Welcome to this space of rest, this sanctuary of stillness where you've chosen to arrive just as you are. There's nowhere else you need to be right now, nothing else demanding your attention. As you settle in, perhaps feeling the surface beneath you supporting your body, know that this is your time. A time not for doing, but for being. Not for achieving, but for allowing. In the gentle wisdom of Zen Buddhism, we find a profound truth that has echoed through centuries. The art of letting go is perhaps the most essential skill we can cultivate. Tonight, we're going to explore this ancient practice together, not through force or effort, but through a soft, natural unfolding. Let your breath find its own rhythm. Let your body begin to release wherever it's been holding on. And let your mind know that, for these moments we share, it can rest from its constant work. You are safe here. You are welcome here. And you are exactly where you need to be. Creating your sanctuary of rest. Before we dive deeply into the philosophical waters of Zen and the practice of letting go, let's first attend to the immediate and practical. Your environment matters. Your comfort matters. Everything about how you've prepared for this moment contributes to your ability to truly release and find rest. Think of this preparation not as a checklist to complete, but as an act of compassion toward yourself. A way of honoring this body that carries you through your days, this mind that works so tirelessly on your behalf. Look around you now, wherever you are. Is the lighting gentle enough? If there's still brightness streaming in, consider dimming it or allowing darkness to embrace your space more fully. Darkness isn't something to fear but to welcome. It's the natural state that invites rest, the condition under which so much of life regenerates and renews itself. In the absence of harsh light, your nervous system begins to shift, understanding on a primordial level that the time for activity has passed and the time for restoration has arrived. Temperature, too, plays its subtle but significant role. Your body sleeps best when slightly cool, when you can burrow into warmth but aren't trapped in stifling heat. If you have control over your environment, let it be comfortably cool. If not, release any frustration about it. The Zen master would remind us that clinging to the ideal of perfect conditions is itself a form of attachment that prevents rest. We work with what is, not with what we wish were. Notice the surface beneath you. Your bed, your mat, wherever you've chosen to lie down. Feel its texture, its firmness or softness, the way it receives your weight without complaint or judgment. This surface asks nothing of you. It simply holds you. Can you, in turn, allow yourself to be held? So often we brace against support, holding ourselves rigid even when lying down, as if we don't trust that we'll be caught if we truly let go. But you can release that vigilance now. Let gravity do its ancient work. Let the earth below you, however many floors or miles away, exert its steady pull. You are supported. You have always been supported. Now turn your attention to what you're wearing. Is it comfortable? Does anything bind or restrict? If so, and if you're able, adjust it. Loosen what's tight. Remove what's unnecessary. The body cannot fully relax when constantly receiving signals of constriction. But again, if adjustment isn't possible, simply notice and let go of the story about it. Everything, even slight discomfort, can become part of our practice of acceptance when we stop fighting against what is. Consider the sounds around you. Perhaps there's silence, or perhaps there's the ambient noise of life continuing beyond your walls. Traffic passing. Neighbors moving about. The hum of appliances. The settling of your building. In Zen practice, we don't seek to eliminate all sound, to create some hermetically sealed environment. Instead, we learn to let sounds be sounds. They arise. They peak. They fade. They don't require our response, our analysis, our story making. A car passes, and it's just a car passing. Nothing more, nothing less. When you stop resisting the sounds of life, they stop disturbing you. They become like raindrops on a roof, part of the natural texture of existence. Think, too, about what preceded this moment. What kind of day has led you here? Was it filled with stress and striving? With moments of joy and connection? With monotony or adventure or some mixture of both? Whatever it held, it's now complete. The day you've lived cannot be relived or revised. It exists now only in memory, and even those memories are softer than we think, more malleable, less solid than the stories we tell ourselves about them. If you've eaten recently, notice how your stomach feels. In Zen monasteries, practitioners are taught to leave adequate time between meals and meditation, between dinner and sleep, because digestion requires energy and presence from the body. If you feel full or uncomfortable, simply acknowledge it without judgment. Your body is doing what bodies do, processing and converting food into energy. You don't need to manage or control this process. It happens on its own, as it always has, as it always will. Consider, too, any substances you've consumed. Perhaps you had caffeine earlier in the day, and some of it still courses through your system. Perhaps you had alcohol, hoping it would help you relax. The Zen approach isn't to judge these choices but to notice their effects without attachment. Whatever you've taken in is now part of your present experience. Wishing it weren't won't change reality. Accepting what is, however, can change your relationship to it. Many of us come to rest carrying the weight of our devices, our screens, the endless scroll of information and connection that defines modern life. If your phone is nearby, consider placing it somewhere out of arm's reach, face down, perhaps in another room if possible. Not because technology is inherently wrong, but because its presence, even when silent and still, whispers to us of the wider world and its demands. We're so conditioned to respond to its call that even the possibility of a notification keeps a part of our awareness tethered to the waking world. To truly let go, we must sometimes literally create distance from the things that most habitually capture our attention. The ancient Zen teachers practiced in monasteries far from cities, in mountain temples where the sounds were of wind through pine trees, water over stones, birds greeting the dawn. They understood something essential, that environment shapes consciousness. We may not be able to recreate such settings, but we can create pockets of simplicity, zones of quiet, spaces where the modern world's intensity dims at least for a while. Your bedroom, your resting place, can become such a sanctuary if you treat it as one. Not a space for work or entertainment or endless scrolling, but a place dedicated to the most fundamental human need, rest. As you lie here now, body settling, breath flowing, notice any ways you might still be holding on to the day. Are your jaw muscles tight? Is your brow furrowed? Are your hands clenched? Are your shoulders risen toward your ears? These are the body's ways of clinging, of not quite believing that it's safe to release. Each point of tension is like a tiny fist, gripping something it no longer needs to hold. We'll work with these more directly in a little while, but for now, just notice. Awareness itself, gentle and non-judgmental, is often enough. To begin the process of release, think about your breathing, but don't try to control it yet. Just observe. Is it shallow or deep? Fast or slow? Smooth or irregular? Breath is the bridge between conscious and unconscious, between what we can control and what happens by itself. It's the place where voluntary and involuntary meet. And in Zen practice, the breath becomes a central focus, not because we must breathe correctly, but because by returning attention to breath again and again, we train the mind to come home, to stop its endless wandering, to rest in what is rather than what might be or what was. Your preparation for rest isn't just about physical comfort, though that matters. It's about creating conditions, external and internal, that support letting go. It's about recognizing that sleep is not something you do but something you allow. You cannot force yourself to sleep any more than you can force a flower to bloom. You can only create the conditions, remove the obstacles, and then trust in the natural intelligence of your body and mind. In Zen Buddhism, there's a concept called beginner's mind, approaching each moment as if for the first time, without preconceptions or expectations. Can you bring beginner's mind to this experience of rest? Even if you've struggled with sleep for years, even if last night was difficult, can you release the story that tonight must be the same? Each moment is new. Each breath is the first breath. This night is not any other night. It is this night, and it is unfolding exactly as it must. As we move forward into the deeper teachings and practices, know that you've already begun the work. By choosing to be here, by creating this space, by turning your attention inward, you've taken the first essential steps. Everything else will follow naturally, like water finding its way downhill, like a leaf settling to earth, like sleep coming to claim you when you finally, truly, let go. The ancient art of letting go, foundations in Zen wisdom. To understand the art of letting go from a Zen perspective, we must first understand what we're letting go of and why holding on creates the very suffering we're trying to escape. This teaching sits at the heart of Buddhist philosophy, and it's both simple and profound, obvious and elusive, easy to grasp intellectually and challenging to embody fully. Buddhism emerged over 2,500 years ago when Siddhartha Gautama, the man who would become known as the Buddha, sat beneath a Bodhi tree and refused to rise until he understood the nature of suffering and its end. What he discovered, and what generations of practitioners have verified through their own experience, is that suffering doesn't arise from the circumstances of life itself but from our relationship to those circumstances. More specifically, suffering arises from our clinging, our grasping, our refusal to accept the fundamental nature of existence. The Buddha articulated this insight in what are known as the Four Noble Truths. The first truth acknowledges that suffering exists, that life contains pain, disease, loss, disappointment, and death. This isn't pessimism but realism. The second truth identifies the origin of this suffering. It's tanha, often translated as craving or clinging or attachment. We suffer because we want things to be different than they are. We want pleasant experiences to last forever. We want unpleasant experiences to go away immediately. We want to control what cannot be controlled. The third truth offers hope: suffering can end. And the fourth truth lays out the path to that ending. From these foundational teachings, Zen Buddhism developed in China beginning around the 6th century, when the monk Bodhidharma traveled from India bringing meditation practices that emphasized direct experience over scholarly study. The Chinese called this Chan Buddhism, and when it later spread to Japan, it became known as Zen. Throughout this evolution, the core insight about attachment remained central, but Zen developed its own unique flavor, its own ways of pointing to the truth. Zen emphasizes suddenness where other schools might emphasize gradual progress. It uses koans, those puzzling, paradoxical questions and stories, to short-circuit the rational mind's endless circling. It values simplicity, directness, and the ordinary. A Zen master might say the path to enlightenment is found in chopping wood and carrying water, in eating when hungry and sleeping when tired. There's nothing esoteric or mystical required. The extraordinary is hidden in the ordinary, waiting to be recognized. But what exactly is attachment? This word gets used so frequently that it can lose its meaning, becoming just another spiritual concept to collect and carry around. Attachment, in the Buddhist sense, isn't about connection or love. You can love someone deeply without being attached to them. You can care about outcomes without being attached to specific results. Attachment is more like clinging, like grasping with a closed fist. It's the desperate quality in how we relate to experience, the white-knuckled grip we maintain on things that are, by their nature, slippery and temporary. Imagine you're holding a beautiful bird in your hands. You can hold it gently, appreciating its presence, feeling its warmth and the flutter of its heartbeat. Or you can grip it tightly, terrified it will fly away, squeezing so hard that you damage what you're trying to preserve. The difference between these two ways of holding, one open and one closed, is the difference between love and attachment, between appreciation and clinging. We cling to pleasant experiences, wanting them to last forever. A wonderful meal, a perfect day, a moment of connection with someone we love, we want to freeze time, to make permanent what is by nature impermanent. And paradoxically, this very clinging prevents us from fully enjoying the experience in the first place. We're already mourning its end even while it's happening, already anxious about its loss, already trying to figure out how to recreate it in the future. The experience becomes less vivid, less immediate, because we're experiencing our thoughts about it rather than the thing itself. We also cling to our sense of self, perhaps the deepest attachment of all. We have ideas about who we are, our personality, our history, our traits, our roles, our story. And we spend enormous energy maintaining and defending this construct. When something threatens our self-image, we react with fear or anger. When something affirms it, we feel temporarily satisfied. But the self, from a Buddhist perspective, is also impermanent, also constructed, also more fluid and empty than we imagine. This isn't to say you don't exist. The Buddha never taught that we're completely without self or that nothing is real. Rather, he taught that the self we cling to so desperately isn't what we think it is. It's not a solid, unchanging essence but a flowing process, a series of moments of consciousness arising and passing away. When we try to solidify this flow, to make it into something fixed and permanent, we create suffering for ourselves. Zen teacher Thich Nhat Hanh used a beautiful image to illustrate this. He spoke of looking at a wave in the ocean and asked, "What is a wave?" It seems to be a distinct thing, rising and falling, with a beginning and end, separate from other waves. But look more closely. The wave is made entirely of water. It's not separate from the ocean but a temporary form the ocean is taking. When it crashes on the shore, the wave hasn't died or disappeared. It's simply returned to being ocean in a less obvious way. Nothing is lost. Nothing is gained. Form changes, but the essential nature remains. We are like waves. We arise for a time in a particular form, with a particular name and story, and then we subside back into the larger whole from which we never truly separated. When we cling to the waveness, insisting, "I am this wave and not the ocean," we create suffering. When we recognize our fundamental nature, we find peace. Another Zen teacher, Shunryu Suzuki, famously said, "In the beginner's mind there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind there are few." This applies to letting go. When we approach life with a mind already full of opinions, judgments, expectations, and conclusions, there's no room for new experience. We encounter everything through the filter of what we already think we know. We meet people and immediately categorize them. We face situations and immediately compare them to past situations. We're never fully present because we're always relating to our memories and projections rather than to what's actually happening. The practice of letting go, then, is partly about emptying ourselves of these accumulated ideas, these mental habits, these ways of prejudging experience before it's even fully arrived. It's about meeting each moment fresh, as if for the first time, because in a real sense, each moment is the first time. This particular configuration of circumstances has never existed before and will never exist again. This breath you're taking now has never been taken. This thought arising in your mind is unique to this instant. Everything is always new if we can see it clearly enough. But we must be careful here not to create yet another ideal to cling to, another standard against which to judge ourselves. The goal isn't to have a perfectly empty mind or to never experience attachment. Such perfection is itself a trap, another form of clinging. The practice is gentler than that. It's about noticing when we're holding on, recognizing the suffering it creates, and gradually, patiently, learning to open our grip. Not once and for all in some moment of dramatic transformation, but again and again, in countless small moments throughout our lives. A Zen story illustrates this beautifully. Two monks are walking together and come to a river crossing. A young woman is standing at the edge, unable to cross because she'll ruin her silk clothing. One monk, without hesitation, picks her up and carries her across, setting her down safely on the other side. The monks continue walking in silence. Hours later, the second monk can't contain himself anymore. "We've taken vows not to touch women," he says. "How could you carry her like that?" The first monk replies, "I set her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This is the nature of attachment. We pick things up, grievances, desires, worries, memories, plans, and we carry them long after the moment has passed, long after there's any purpose in holding them. The art of letting go is learning to set things down, again and again, trusting that if we truly need them we can always pick them up again, but recognizing that most of what we carry is simply habit, not necessity. From a Zen perspective, attachment prevents us from experiencing reality directly. It places a layer of concept, of thought, of mental commentary between us and immediate experience. When we're attached to how things should be, we can't fully be with how things are. When we're clinging to the past or reaching toward the future, we're not present. And presence, this radical being here now, is the only place where peace is available, the only place where we actually live. The great Zen master Dogen wrote, "To study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be enlightened by all things." This progression shows the path. We start by looking at ourselves, examining our patterns and habits. Then we let go of our fixed ideas about who we are. And in that letting go, in that forgetting, we discover something vast, something that was always there but obscured by our narrow self-concern. This doesn't mean becoming passive or indifferent. We can care deeply about things while remaining unattached to specific outcomes. We can love people fully while accepting that they will change and eventually die. We can work hard toward goals while holding them lightly, recognizing that we can control our effort but not the results. This kind of engaged yet unattached living is the heart of Zen practice. The teaching on attachment also connects intimately with the Buddhist understanding of the three poisons: greed, hatred, and delusion. These three mental states, driven by attachment and aversion, perpetuate suffering. Greed is the grasping, wanting more, never satisfied. Hatred is the pushing away, rejecting what is, resisting reality. Delusion is not seeing things clearly, being caught in wrong views and misunderstandings. All three arise from the same root, our refusal to accept things as they are. When we practice letting go, we're not trying to eliminate desire or to stop caring about life. A common misconception about Buddhism is that it teaches detachment in the sense of becoming cold or distant, no longer engaging with life's joys and sorrows. This misunderstanding has prevented many people from exploring these teachings. True non-attachment, as taught in Zen, is actually a fuller way of engaging with life. When we're not constantly trying to control outcomes, we can participate more wholeheartedly. When we're not resisting what is, we have energy available for creative response. When we're not clinging to fixed ideas about how things should be, we can see more clearly what actually is and what might be possible. Think of attachment like this. Imagine you're swimming in the ocean, and a wave is coming toward you. You have two choices. You can brace yourself, stiffen your body, and try to resist the wave's power. When you do this, the wave crashes into you with its full force. You might get knocked over, tumbled around, end up with a mouthful of salt water. Or you can dive beneath the wave, moving with it rather than against it. You still feel its power, but it doesn't overwhelm you. You use its energy rather than fighting it. Life is like these waves, constantly moving, constantly changing. Attachment is like bracing against the waves. Letting go is like diving through them. Neither approach prevents the waves from coming. The ocean is what it is. But one approach leads to constant struggle and frequent overwhelm, while the other allows for a kind of fluid participation that's far less exhausting and much more sustainable. In Zen training, students are sometimes given koans specifically designed to help them experience letting go directly rather than just understanding it conceptually. One famous koan asks, a monk asked Joshu, "What is the meaning of Bodhidharma coming from the West?" Joshu replied, "The oak tree in the garden." This seems nonsensical. What does an oak tree have to do with the founder of Zen or his journey? But the point isn't to figure out the logical connection. The point is to sit with the koan until the mind that needs everything to make sense, the mind that must understand and categorize and explain, finally gives up. In that giving up, in that letting go of the need to know, something else can emerge, a direct seeing that bypasses the thinking mind entirely. This practice of letting go isn't something we do once and then we're done. It's a moment-by-moment practice, a continual returning. We let go of a thought, and another arises, and we let go of that one too. We release our grip on one expectation, and another forms, and we release that as well. Like training a muscle, each repetition strengthens the capacity. Each moment of releasing makes the next release slightly easier. And we're gentle with ourselves in this practice. Zen teachers emphasize kindness, patience, not striving. If we make letting go into another thing we must achieve, another goal to pursue aggressively, we've missed the point. We're just adding another layer of attachment on top of our existing attachments. Instead, we approach this practice the way we might approach a shy animal, softly, without sudden movements, with respect for its nature, trusting that with patience it will come to us. Tonight, as you lie here preparing for sleep, you're already practicing letting go. You're releasing your hold on the day. You're allowing your body to stop its doing and enter its being. You're permitting your mind to slow its frantic activity. You're trusting that sleep will come, that rest will happen, that you don't have to force or control this most natural of processes. This is the essence of the teaching. This is the art that all the ancient wisdom points toward. Not some special technique or secret method, but this simple, profound act of releasing your grip and trusting the flow. The dance of impermanence, finding peace in constant change. At the very heart of Buddhist teaching, woven through every practice and insight, lies the truth of impermanence. In Pali, the language of early Buddhist texts, this is called anicca. In Japanese Zen, it's known as mujo. In English, we say impermanence, transience, change, flux. Whatever word we use, we're pointing toward the same fundamental characteristic of existence. Nothing lasts, nothing remains unchanged, everything is in constant motion even when it appears still. This teaching of impermanence is so central that it's considered one of the three marks of existence, the three characteristics that apply to absolutely everything in the conditioned world. The other two are dukkha, often translated as suffering or unsatisfactoriness, and anatta, meaning non-self. These three are intimately connected. Because things are impermanent, clinging to them causes suffering. Because nothing lasts, there's no permanent self to cling to in the first place. But impermanence isn't merely a philosophical concept to contemplate. It's a visceral reality to be experienced, recognized, and ultimately accepted in every moment of life. Right now, as you lie here, your body is changing. Cells are dying and being born. Breath is flowing in and out. Your heart is beating, never the same beat twice. Thoughts are arising and dissolving in your mind like bubbles surfacing in water. The temperature around you is shifting. Sounds are appearing and fading. Everything, absolutely everything, is moving, transforming, becoming something other than what it was a moment ago. We intellectually understand this, of course. No one reaches adulthood believing that circumstances remain static. We've all experienced loss, change, unexpected shifts in our lives. We've seen relationships end, people die, jobs vanish, homes change hands. We know that the seasons cycle, that children grow, that technology evolves, that nothing stays the same. And yet, despite this intellectual knowledge, we live as if permanence were possible. We act as if we could hold on to things, as if the good times could last forever, as if we ourselves were unchanging entities moving through a changing world. This disconnect between what we know and how we live creates enormous suffering. We plan for futures that may never arrive. We reminisce about pasts that we've colored with such heavy nostalgia they bear little resemblance to what actually occurred. We invest our identity in roles and relationships and circumstances that are, by their nature, temporary. And when change inevitably comes, as it always does, we experience it as a violation, a problem to be solved, rather than as the most natural and fundamental quality of existence. The Zen approach to impermanence isn't to deny it or resist it or even to merely tolerate it. It's to embrace it fully, to see it clearly, and to recognize that the impermanence of all things is not a flaw in the fabric of reality but its very essence. In Zen philosophy, impermanence and Buddha nature, that fundamental awakened quality that exists in all beings, are not separate. The 13th century Zen master Dogen wrote extensively about this, saying that impermanence itself is Buddha nature, that the flowing, changing quality of existence is exactly what allows for awakening, for transformation, for liberation. Think about a river. If you step into a river and then step into it again, you're stepping into different water. The river is never the same twice. And yet we call it a river. We give it a name. We speak of it as if it were a fixed, permanent thing. The river isn't permanent. The river is a process, a continuous flowing, a particular pattern of water moving through a particular landscape. What we call the river is actually the changing itself, the constant motion. If the water stopped moving, it would no longer be a river. It would be a pond or a lake. The river exists precisely because of impermanence, not despite it. We are like rivers. What we call ourself is not a fixed, unchanging entity but a process, a flowing, a continuous becoming. The person you were 10 years ago is not the same person lying here now. Your cells have been replaced. Your thoughts have evolved. Your memories have been rewritten by subsequent experience. Your relationships have shifted. Even your name, which seems so permanent, is just a sound, a social construction, a convenient label for something that's constantly in flux. You are not a noun but a verb, not a thing but a happening. When we truly absorb this understanding, when we don't just think about it but feel it in our bones, see it in our experience, something shifts. The urgency to control everything relaxes. The fear of change diminishes. The grief over loss becomes more bearable because we recognize that loss is built into the structure of existence. Everything we encounter is already leaving, already dying, already transforming into what comes next. This isn't nihilistic or depressing when seen clearly. It's actually liberating. Consider a beautiful sunset. Would it be more beautiful if it lasted forever? Would you appreciate it more if you could freeze it? Make it permanent, return to it again and again? No. Part of what makes the sunset beautiful is its transience, its fleeting quality, the fact that it will soon give way to night. We don't resent the sunset for ending. We don't feel that sunset has failed us because it doesn't last. We appreciate it precisely because it's temporary, because we know we must pay attention now or we'll miss it. Can we apply this same understanding to everything else? Can we see our relationships, our experiences, our achievements, even our pain and struggles as sunsets, beautiful, meaningful, and temporary? Can we appreciate what's here while it's here without desperately trying to make it stay? This is what the practice of embracing impermanence invites us into. In Zen monasteries, practitioners often engage in specific contemplations of impermanence. They might meditate on the changing seasons, watching spring's green growth give way to summer's fullness, then autumn's release, then winter's dormancy. They might contemplate their own bodies, recognizing that this form that seems so solid and real is actually composed of elements that came from elsewhere and will return elsewhere. The minerals in your bones came from the earth. The water in your blood came from rain and rivers. The air in your lungs came from the atmosphere, perhaps exhaled by a tree on the other side of the world. You are not separate from the larger whole. You are the larger whole temporarily organized into this particular pattern we call you. Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh introduced the term interbeing to describe this interconnected quality of existence. Nothing exists independently. Everything relies on everything else for its existence. A flower, he would say, is made of non-flower elements. It contains the sunshine that fed it, the rain that watered it, the soil that nourished it, the gardener who planted it, the entire earth and sky and web of relationships that allowed it to emerge. When the flower dies, it doesn't disappear. It transforms into compost, into soil, into nutrients for other plants. Nothing is created. Nothing is destroyed. Everything is constantly recycling, transforming, becoming something new. This understanding can help us with one of the hardest aspects of impermanence, the death of those we love and the knowledge of our own eventual death. From a Zen perspective, death is not an ending but a transformation, not an annihilation but a changing of form. The wave doesn't die when it crashes on the shore. It returns to being ocean. The wave was never separate from the ocean to begin with. It was always a temporary formation of water, and when that formation dissolves, nothing is lost. The water remains. We might find this comforting or we might find it abstract, difficult to feel in the face of real grief. Zen doesn't promise to eliminate the pain of loss. It acknowledges that pain is real, that grief is natural, that we will mourn the changing forms of what we love. But it also suggests that beneath this pain is a deeper understanding available to us, a recognition that what we truly love, the essence, the consciousness, the fundamental nature, cannot die because it was never born. It simply is, taking different forms, manifesting through different bodies and relationships, but never truly separate from the whole. Meditating on impermanence isn't meant to make us sad or anxious. When practiced skillfully, it actually brings tremendous freedom and joy. When we recognize that this moment is unique and fleeting, we pay more attention. We show up more fully. We speak more truthfully. We love more openly. We waste less time on petty concerns because we recognize how precious and brief our time actually is. The Zen poet Issa wrote many haikus that capture this bittersweet beauty of impermanence. In one, he describes dew on morning grass, knowing it will evaporate with the rising sun, and he says this impermanent, ephemeral dew is nonetheless precious. Exactly as it is. In another, he writes about cherry blossoms, those flowers so central to Japanese culture, which bloom spectacularly but briefly, creating a blizzard of petals and then vanishing for another year. We don't love the cherry blossoms less because they're fleeting. We love them more. In your own life, you've experienced this. Think of a perfect moment from your past, maybe a particular afternoon with someone you loved, or a place you visited, or an accomplishment you achieved. That moment is gone now. It exists only in memory, and the memory is already a story you've told yourself, edited and shaped by time. The actual moment, the lived experience, is unrepeatable. And yet, that moment's impermanence doesn't diminish its value. If anything, knowing you can't go back makes it more precious in memory. Now think about difficult times you've experienced. Perhaps there was a period of illness, or loss, or struggle. At the time, it might have felt endless, insurmountable, as if it would define your life forever. But it passed. It changed. You changed. The impermanence that can seem so threatening when we're trying to hold on to good things becomes our ally when we're moving through difficulty. This too shall pass, the wisdom traditions.